Hear, hear. Hear, hear. Hear, hear. Parkinson's Podcast. Welcome to the Hear, Hear Parkinson's Podcast, where you will hear from special guests covering the world of Parkinson's with a deep dive on the World Parkinson Congress and a look at how the WPC has helped make extraordinary progress in the Parkinson's community by creating space for people with Parkinson's to have a seat at the table.
Here, here. It's another episode of the new podcast here, here, leading us all up to the next Parkinson Congress in Phoenix, Arizona, a little over a year from now. And here, we also have my more or less regular co-host, Eli Pollard. Welcome, Eli.
Thanks for having me, Edgar. I love being here. Love doing the podcast with you.
Thank you. Actually, today is, well, they're all special, each, but this one is sort of special because 2 years ago when we met in Barcelona, I saw from the program that there was a, what did you call it? A book?
The Book Nook. Exactly.
Book Nook.
In the exhibit hall, the Book Nook.
Yeah. And I saw that the co-authors of Ending Parkinson's Disease were going to be there. And I thought, whoa, these are sort of rock stars in my mind. They've written one of the best books I've read about the disease that I carry. And I thought I might just, there's going to probably be a line down the hall and out and what, and I walked over and it wasn't as bad actually. And I managed to squeeze to the front and say hello to the three guys, 3 out of 4. And then I said, sort of, could we do, like the selfie? And I'm lousy at taking selfies, so I think it was actually Larry from PD Avengers that I asked. I didn't know who he was at the time. I said, could you please take a picture of me and the three? And the 3 were very forthcoming. And then at the end of that, I said, by the way, I do a podcast back home in Norway. Would you possibly... And they said, come on your podcast. Yes, we will. All 3 of them. And one of them is our special guest today. It's Michael Okun. Welcome, Michael.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, Edgar. Pleasure to be here, Eli. Just an awesome opportunity to talk some Parkinson now.
Yeah. So this is to promote the next Congress in Austin. Why are you going to be there?
In Phoenix, not in Phoenix. Next podcast in Phoenix.
What did I say?
In Austin. Don't send people to the wrong city.
It's Phoenix. It's Phoenix with a P. We'll get back to that. Why do you plan to go to the next Congress, Michael?
Oh, well, I mean, it's kind of already a must hold on the calendar. For me, we live in this artificial world where we go to the laboratory and we try to figure out what's going on in the brains of folks and in the bodies of folks, because Parkinson isn't just a brain disease, right? And we're trying to nip the edges of this thing, and the World Parkinson Congress is the first time that you smash all the people together that have Parkinson and the family members, the people affected, the scientists, the advocates, the politicians. You smash them all together, and it's really a great experience, and it has a fundamental importance, and that's to drive forward. And we know, and we've known, and penning a couple of books, how important it is to have, the right message, the right optics for a disease, and to draw the right attention to it. And at the same time, we have to be focused on what we're thinking about when we go back to the laboratory or we do clinical research with persons with disease. And so it's not only impactful, it's inspiring. And, I think some people may mistake the World Parkinson Congress as, like this is just a chance for everybody to get together at the club and hug each other and have a good time. And certainly all that's true. And I don't want to under highlight the fact that there might be some drinking and other things that go on at those types of meetings. But I will tell you this, that fundamentally the dialogues have to happen. The attention has to get drawn to the disease if we're going to move, like HIV and cancer, and we need to get the right advocacy together. But we also need to be asking the right questions in science, and you just can't do that in a bubble. And if you look at this World Parkinson Congress, versus the number of meetings in Parkinson disease where lots of scientists go, but nobody with the disease goes, it's a shameful ratio or proportion, and so this meeting ends up maybe being the most important meeting anybody can go to.
Hear, hear.
Hear, hear.
Thank you. I didn't even pay him to say that, Edgar. He just said it.
Yeah, no, I'm not paid. My wife wishes I would take money from people to promote products and drugs and all that stuff, but I don't do that. I've never done that in my career. So you only get the bare naked truth, Pollard, the bare naked truth.
Excellent. So, Michael, I have a question.
How many congresses have you been to out of the 6 that have been and the 7th one coming up, Michael?
I'm 6 for 6. I remember the first Congress when it started in Washington, D.C., and I remember being, at an event there and being with Charlotte Fawn, who's way more important than Stan Fawn. I know everybody thinks that Stan Fawn is like the father of everything and the father of this meeting and everything, but you got to meet his wife, to understand, that what was the true, foundation of the success there for that guy. So, Stan and Eli, they had that notion. They woke up thinking we got to do this, and then they became completely, focused, maniacal, like we must get this Congress together, and they did it in Washington. And the question is, they took a big risk because nothing like this had ever been done. I think some of the scientists and everything were like, "Oh, this is garbage. Why are we walking around with people with the disease?" I'm just telling you the truth, and there was a moment of, is this important? And it just immediately caught on. And so, yeah, I've been to all of them since that DC Congress.
Yeah, well, I still think that it's funny that at that first Congress, I overheard someone saying, "Oh, just participate, make Stan happy. He's going to retire one day, and then this meeting won't happen again." I literally heard someone say that at the first Congress. And what's funny, Michael, is when I told Stan, Dr. Fawn, who is the founder, Dr. Stanley Fawn, when I told him that I overheard someone say that, he wasn't annoyed that they didn't think we could pull off another Congress. He was annoyed that someone thought he was going to retire.
That's funny.
He was like, "What? I think I'm going to retire?" Which was perfect. It's very telling about who he is.
Yeah, hilarious, totally true and important. But just remember, his wife's name is Charlotte, and that's the secret.
Okay.
Secret sauce.
Are you going to hold any presentations yourself, Michael?
At the World Parkinson Congress?
Yes.
Well,
that's the one we're talking about.
Program's not been finalized yet, so we don't know yet with where Dr. Okun's going to fit in, but I suspect there'll be something down the road for him at the Congress.
I mean, if you're smart, you'll have my daughter play electric guitar. She's 15, and that'll be a lot more entertaining than me. But you know what? It doesn't matter. Edgar, there's a lot of young people in the field. There's a lot of people with a lot to say. And the most important thing is that we choose the topics and we bring the people who have something important to say and the people that are going to stimulate the dialogue and are going to listen. And we have those difficult conversations. And, frankly, one of the tragedies of a lot of meetings is that we talk at each other, but not with each other. And if we can, do that at the World Parkinson Congress, and even when the topics are difficult, and guess what? I think if you choose a Congress, in Parkinson, and you say who's going to try to, go to the most, not only interesting, but really the most challenging topics and some things that people don't want to talk about, this is going to be the Congress that brings that dialogue. Without dialogue, we don't progress. And so I'll just say, Edgar, it doesn't matter. And in fact, I'm old enough now. Eli knows this. I don't call myself old. I call myself seasoned. I also call all the people in my clinic, I take care of seasoned. We're not old. We're just seasoned. But, I'm at that point where the sound of my own voice is just getting less and less appealing. So listening to other people's voices is a lot better. So.
Well, but that leads on to another topic, which is called unconference. It's actually not something we thought up. It's a common word in the meetings industry, where the unconference is what happens in the hallway, what happens in the cafeteria, what happens over lunch, what happens when you and I meet at the end of the lunch break, and you say, "Oh, we should go in again, shouldn't we?" And I say, "No, because you just said." And then you have, as you said, your maybe uncomfortable topic, but we just struck a note on it, you and I. And so we look at the program and we say, that can be another time. Right now, you and I are having the best dialogue ever. And that is sort of, as I said, what is now called the unconference, what happens outside the meeting rooms, outside the round table, the prepared discussions.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that we don't allocate enough time at conferences for people to talk, even during programs. And again, that gets at the point of talking at people instead of with people. And so, I'm not sure, like who the guru of the conference is to try to influence on this, but she might be on this podcast with us, Edgar. And I would just say, like when you make the programs, people don't tend to remember every minute of all these didactics, and everybody tries to smash every slide possible into their slide carousels. But boy, if the speakers paused and talked, more to the audience and with the audience, and there was more interaction. The more interaction in my mind, the better. And there's always so much great interaction at this particular Congress. And so, I think it'd be a lot of fun. I also think it would be really cool. I've been challenging all the Parkinson researchers for years out on the road that we switch our slide carousels before the meetings, and we give each other's talks, but we're not allowed to look at each other's slide carousel. But nobody's taken me up on this yet. But I think that would be a lot of fun, like to flash up the slides from Mark Hallett or Joe Jankovic or Tony Lang or Anthony Shapiro, or any of the great researchers all over the world. I think it would be really fun to flash up and try to give their talk without actually having seen it before and see what your take is on it. So nobody seems to want to do that yet. So I just don't think
that seems like a good game night with people at a pub event, Michael. You deliver the best set of slides they've never seen before.
It's like nerdy science karaoke, like where you flip up the thing and you have a certain number of seconds on each slide and you have to describe the slide, for in karaoke. Yeah, it could be fun.
I love it.
So that sounds like a lot of fun.
Does. You've been to every Congress, which is awesome. You actually, Edgar might not realize this, Michael was helped design the program in which year was that, Michael?
I don't know. I've been on so many design committees. I don't even remember
Okay,
anymore.
you were clinical co-chair with David Standard, Dr. David Standard, and I'm losing the year if it was Kyoto or if it was Portland, but I think it was Kyoto. But you've been involved for so long, and it's hard. You may not even know, but how has the WPC experience changed you professionally? I mean, you might not even know because it's been impacting you for so long, but did it help you shape sort of your, I don't want to say philosophy, but sort of just how you do things, and how has it impacted you in the clinic or in your research or in your personal life, I guess? Just how has it impacted you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that the like the amount of interaction during the Congress and um, a lot of our lives, as scientists, clinicians, um, end up being pretty blurry. And what I mean by that is you travel all over the place, or Zoom all over the place, and you can't quite remember everything that happened. It's a little bit scary, right? And probably another conversation for another time. But you know, the the pure blurriness of it should remind us how important it is to have those moments. And Edgar was referring to those moments in the context of the sidebar conversations and things. But it really is the moments at that Congress that have led to kind of aha and oh, you know what, we should pay attention to these things. And so let me just kind of maybe go back to the first Congress and just think about like what we were talking about along that road. In DC, sleep was not a thing in Parkinson. Okay, wasn't a thing. Like sleep in Parkinson disease, pain in Parkinson disease, not a thing. Not a thing. Sexual dysfunction in Parkinson disease, not a thing. The idea of how Parkinson spread was not a thing yet. And hadn't been challenged, and everything didn't really exist. The idea that Parkinson, was all over the body, it was a body disease and not just a brain disease, not a thing. And it really took time for people to have those interactions and listen to each other and pick up things like, I'm smelling my partner differently, and then it's like, okay, like, are we gonna go from crazy, like my career, I always say I went from crazy to cool to doing things that are now completely accepted, right? When you look at, putting things in people's brains and everything, I started out completely crazy, right? And so a lot of these ideas, they start out going from crazy to cool to like mainstream. And a lot of that has to happen off the stage, not on stage. And so those are the kinds of things that I think about. And most, if not all of the things that I mentioned probably were all sidebar conversations at that Congress, and people questioning and saying things that were like, that all the experts thought, oh boy, this is kind of nutty, right? And then they think back and like, they were right, constipation's a thing, so I think that's how I try to, at least in my own mind, think about value, because I think your question is, what's the value, and what's the value add? The value add is getting people thinking, getting people challenging, getting people grappling, and you don't have to insult people to question things.
Mhm.
And I think in an age where sometimes political correctness overcomes intellectual sparring, we gotta have some spars, and we gotta talk about these things, and we gotta go places, and sometimes you go places and it's the failures that drive the successes. And so I think it's super important. So that's at least how I think about it.
I totally agree. But it's great to hear you say it, because sometimes I feel when I say stuff like that, I'm obviously quite biased to the work that we're doing. And so to have somebody outside in the space who's actually experienced it as a professional is really important to hear you say that. So thank you. I appreciate that. 20 years of work, at least something's come out of it in my life.
It's good because we keep coming back to this. I called it unconference. Michael now says offstage and dialogue, and that is more or less two sides of the same coin.
Kelly Foote here, my partner here, who's the neurosurgeon that we've been together now. We're work partners, by the way. We both still have our first wives, and so we're but he calls it Fight Club. So that's what a neurosurgeon calls it. How important the Fight Club is to really have something, go after it and fight about it, and really get deep, go deeper. So, and we're going too superficial. So,
yeah, I love that. I think one of the things that, when I interviewed Edgar for his role as an ambassador at the WPC, and I asked him, what is it you like about the Congress? I'm just sharing, Edgar, because we've had this conversation a couple of times now, is that, Edgar said it was the first time he went to a meeting where he saw someone like yourself, Michael, run up to the stage. Usually the case would be keynote speaker or a big speaker would run up to the stage, put their thumb drive in, give their presentation, take it out and run out of the room. And there's really very little opportunity to speak with that person. But that the Edgar's experience at the WPC was so different because he saw people like you speak, and then you hung out. And I said, well, that's partly because we designed the meeting to be that way, where we give everyone multiple tasks. I don't know. There's probably been a Congress, Michael, where I've had you doing 3 or 4 different things. I put everybody to work in multiple ways, so you can't just come in and give a big talk and leave. But is that, from your experience, you've been to a lot of conferences. Is that something that is a little different at the WPC? It is. I have heard people say the accessibility to presenters is unique. And I don't necessarily think we're the only ones doing it, but I do think, how does that impact you when you think about coming? It's not like you're flying in for a day and you're flying out. You're like, all right, I'm there for the week, or I'm there for the 3 days.
Yeah, so I'll kind of say it like this. I think that when WPC started in Washington, some of the, the people in the field were very fearful, of being in a room with people with disease. And this is inappropriate, this is inappropriate that we would have to, share a space and, talk to these people, and they shouldn't be at our meetings, and they shouldn't ask these questions. And some of these questions are so basic, and, we're trying to, so it starts that way. And I think it's an important start, right? It has to kind of start in that sense where, people question, what is the value of this? And is this a waste of time? And should we be, engaging in banter with a different class? Here we're trying to invent the next generation. And the answer is not just yes, we should. The answer is, we should be valuing this as one of the most important things that we can do to drive change. And so if we're in our own bubble and we just keep hearing our own voice over and over, we don't understand the disease, we don't understand the people, we're not asked the questions, even very basic questions will trigger aha moments. Even some of the same questions people have asked, before, and when asked in a different context, a different way by a person or a family that's impacted, it might actually change, and has in many cases changed how people think and go back to the laboratory and go back to the clinic and do things. And so I think what started as an exercise, and let's just kind of make the make our fans out in the patient community happy by letting them rub our shoulders of the giants and stay in the same room, and and we'll tolerate it and go back and do our day jobs, has, really proven to be not, like what some of the, the hoity-toity upper classes of research thought it was, and now is considered to be, a fundamentally important activity, which is the engagement at all levels. And it reminds us of the research that shows us that when you make decisions, your decisions are better when you get more diversity in your thought. Okay. And so how in the world can we be engaged in medical research without bringing in as much medical, expertise and linking it up with people who actually have the disease, and lots of people from lots of cultures and lots of places, to talk about it. And by the way, the diversity questions were not a thing before the World Parkinson Congresses started, and the diversity questions have been, raised. And I mean this in the broadest sense. Maybe Parkinson isn't the same on every continent. There are different genes or different manifestations. The environment affects it. How do you know that unless you talk to Edgar from Norway and compare them to another person from Japan versus Brazil, and we now know, in a lot of, diseases, for whatever reason, there are clusters, and clusters were not a thing before the World Parkinson Congress. And now we're like, oh, people are clustering around dry cleaners. People are clustering, around, golf courses. And it's like, you're crazy. And it's like, no, you're not crazy. You're onto something here. And so, that diversity of thought is really, I think, important in these types of meetings.
Good,
I love
good.
Thank
We
you.
are almost at the end here of a very fruitful and very good discussion, Michael. I'm really looking forward to meeting you in real life, as these days, in real life in Phoenix a little over a year from now, at the end of May 26. But before we let you go, there is what we call the exit question. Which actually gives you no exit, but the thing is, if you are riding in an elevator and stops between two floors and is stuck, who do you want to be stuck with?
Yeah. So it's
Totally free in time and space.
Yeah, it's such a great question. I mean, like, it's such a great question. And you talk to my daughter and my son and my wife, like how fundamental of a nerd I am. Like, I read all sorts of history. We go to historical sites. We look at stuff. So now it's like, you talk about freezing and Parkinson's. It's a question that can freeze me, because it's like, oh my gosh, do I want an author? Do I want a famous figure? Do I want a leader? Do I want an inventor? Do I want, a person that was underestimated, but had such an impact on history? I mean, I don't know. I think today, if you ask me the question every day, 365 days straight, I'll probably give you a different answer, hoping that I can beat everybody. But today, I think I would probably want to be stuck with Gandhi for just a couple of minutes. And I think the reason that I would choose Gandhi is he is one of the few figures in history that he's pure. He's completely pure of thought. He understands himself and is connected to his cause in such a pure way. And God, they used to say Gandhi is Gandhi, and he doesn't need notes. He doesn't need things. Whether he's talking to Parliament or out with the people or on all levels. And I think I would enjoy just kind of picking his brain a little bit to figure out how you get to that, like, zenness of being for something, and so in touch with yourself and what it is that your values and your thoughts are so pure that they become you. And so I think think I'd love to have a little elevator conversation with that and see if he could maybe get me a little closer, to that. So especially as I age.
Absolutely fabulous choice there. Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you, Michael, for being with us today, for sharing your thoughts about the forthcoming World Congress in Phoenix. And thank you, Eli, for being a fabulous co-host as previously.
Thanks, Edgar.
Have a good day, both of you. The sun is shining up here in Norway, so I got to get myself outside. It's really a fabulous day here.
Amazing.
Yeah, when you got
nice walk.
And you're welcome to come visit me,
Run to the
Michael.
light, Edgar. Run to the light.
Thank you for joining the Here Parkinson's podcast. If you would like to experience the next World Parkinson Congress for yourself, to feel and see the change in real time, save the date to join us from May 24th to the 27th, 2026 in Phoenix, Arizona. Learn more at WPC2026.org. This podcast series is made possible with support from Blue Rock Therapeutics.